There we go.
Have the honor again, because as I have throughout this past year and a half and such, to introduce another wonderful painter, oil painter in this case. He paints in gouache and other media, but oil is his specialty. And he's another a special artist in the Waterhouse Gallery. So he's an honored guest here, honored for us and honored for the Waterhouses. And I really do appreciate you coming here. It's a long way. He lives in Santa Barbara, born in Pasadena, by the way. I grew up in La Crescenta, Glendale area, so we're neighbors from years back. But he lives in Santa Barbara, and he's a great artist. Graduated from the Art Academy, or what am I talking about?
Art Center.
The Art Center. All these art academies, but the Art Center, College of Design, very prestigious college of art, and got his degree in illustration. But he has made a transition into fine art and did it very well, very successfully. One of my questions, real quick, and I'll let it go, I'll let him get started, but one of my questions I always ask is, how did you get into art? What drew you into becoming an artist to begin with? And I loved his answer. He says, I wasn't good at anything else. So, that really made me laugh. He says, well, that's why. But art seemed to come natural for him, and he's developed it very well. And if you get a chance to see his artwork in Santa Barbara, stop by the Waterhouse Gallery. You'll see some of his paintings there as well. And he's got some beautiful samples of his work as well here. So let's give him a hand, and I'll give him
a was what they taught at Art Center, so I have still the skeleton of that palette. But they moved their factory from Great Britain to France, and it's all turned into bird poop now. So it's not. With some of the colors you just can't get away from. There's an Indian yellow and CMYK basically. So the yellow is an Indian yellow, and then there's a permanent rose, which is your magenta, and then there's a Dalo turquoise, which is your blue. And then beyond that, I've got a warm and a cool sort of every color. And then there's a cat orange, which you can't really live without. And then there's some cheater colors that have been added on over the years. But you don't need them, but there they are. And so I'm going to be doing a painting of the Duomo.
It's good advice to just tone it with something. And a lot of the frames that I use are pretty gold. And so if you tone it in a gold looking color and you miss a spot, the gold comes through and it matches the frame, and so you harmonize with the frame. So that's the big theory behind this big yellow thing you see. Normally I wouldn't have the time to, or the foresight to have toned anything before working out in the field. So it's toned right away with a Indian yellow, a turkey umber, and a lizard crimson basically, and white back. But you get this color more or less.
So this is the view of the Duomo from the next morning, from the Michelangelo Plaza. And I got kicked out, which happens pretty frequently. So I got kicked out before I could finish, which is usually a good thing. So I'm gonna start with the order I make a painting in is basically the order of things that you couldn't fix later. So so as your paint gets dirtier, as the palette gets muddier and your paint is mixed into each other, becomes hard to achieve the really bright colors at the end. So you want to kind of identify those early and put those on. So let's see, I've got some cheating aids here. I've got a study from last night, and I've already done a little bit of a drawing. So I'm going to go right after some of the brightest, purest things, which happens to be some of the city down in the lower right corner. So what I have witnessed was clouds that filtered light through the city, and at one point it lit up the cathedral pretty good. And so we're gonna kind of go after that. Each time I pick up the brush, I'm going to try to alter the color slightly. So it doesn't matter that it's 100% accurate to what you're seeing, but if you can give us interest, I mean, just don't be boring. And then my medium is just terpenoid regular. So no, there's lots of fancy things you can use and really confuse yourself with. And recommend just nothing, because if you put your, if for some reason the painting goes away without a varnish on it, like it's sold off the easel or what have you, this will dry all the same color. So that's nice. So this is the again, this is the Duomo in Florence, and it's an unbelievable sight in real life. So now I've done a lot of what I consider the absolute most. Well, there's probably actually some more before we move on. Keep doing the yellows. I keep 3 yellows. And sometimes 4 yellows, I guess that's 4 yellows on the palette, because it seems like you can never have enough. So this is the tower. Anybody remember the name of this tower? So one of the tricks I'm going to employ on this, and it works really great, I didn't invent it, for architecture, is to lighten the building as you come down it. So it makes the thing look taller and just gives it some interest. So it's got to move somehow, right? That's part of the idea of changing the color as we go around, is giving movement to the painting. So here I've started slightly darker. I mean, it's not very dramatic, but it's enough where we've given you something there to draw you down. Now there's an oranger tower that's in front. And on a different trip to Italy, I went to a place called Bologna. And Bologna has these amazing old towers. Impossibly tall. And so we'll try to do the same thing with it, where it's just slightly lighter at the bottom. So if I've got light in the white in the light, and the light is kind of golden is what we're trying to say. The white things that are in shadow will be relatively violet generally. So if you had something that was white and it was in a yellow light, because again the color wheel, the way that works, it would be more of a violet color. to cast and do a gold, then you gotta come back and re-golden it. But basically, you're trying to guess what the color of the white in the shadow is going to be. So I made a guess on that. Up here on the dome. So, okay, I'm going to try to cut in the. So part of, when I say cut in, what do I mean? So part of doing the delicate ephemeral colors first means that the darker, thicker colors can go on top, and you can actually control the edge that you're cutting into. So this can be difficult here on what I'm doing right now, is because I'm sort of giving the entire breadth of the painting in terms of light to dark by starting. This is a very delicate color, and then if I were to try to paint this later, it just won't come out as vibrant. So, but if I get it too light, then it doesn't have the same power, and if I get it too dark, you're also hosed. So it's very something I want to be a little careful with. But basically, what I'm doing is the color of the red dome with full sunlight on it. And it'll actually be derived from an orange. Doesn't look too bad. I'm going to start darkening it now as it comes up. I've also got Venetian red on the palette, which is dangerous. But I guess if you're painting Italian stuff,
Why is it dangerous?
oh, it's just so powerful compared to some of these, bird poopy colors from Winsor Newton. It's just really, it's got the strength, So you gotta be aware of how your paints are interacting with each other. They don't all play nice. So that's sort of some of that. Let's try to get a darker version. So they'll have you do in any art school, and it's a complete board, they'll have you do these series of color swatches from lighter to darker, right? And you think, wow, that is an amazing waste of time. But it turns out that if you kind of use those scales in your paintings, it really comes out pretty lovely. So I'm using one here where I'm basically 3 versions of red as it gets darker. So the trick is going to be to feel like the same temperature shift is happening to the other colors as we make this thing look round. Easy to say in theory, but so you can also think about, because this is a round object, we can think about how the different lights around it might influence it, can help give it more roundness. I don't know if I have that much sophistication in this thing for you, but it'd be worth thinking about that when you were on site to say, hey, what's the light doing on this side? And you can see I was pretty sloppy about how to do this fin that comes up, but now that I've got a brush, I can come right along and get a nice clean line. It looks like I know what I'm doing, and that's only because this darker color has cut into the lighter color, and you don't get that chance again. That's it. You can come back with a little brush and try to do that, but you're better off doing it the right order. So now I'm going to try to establish the shadow. Again, amazing thing about oil paint is it can really, it's got kind of more of a range than you need. But what I'm going to try to describe now is like for sure this, we're not looking at any light influencing the color. So, and it's got to have enough difference so that nothing, it's not really true, but it sure does paint a lot easier. You don't want anything in the light side that's darker than anything in the shadow side. So you just want to separate the two. If you can do that, the painting will look very vibrant. It's not quite like that, but if you look at one of my heroes like Bellows, he's very brutal about that. Like his light sides are just blown out, and the shadow sides are super dark. I was just at the Huntington on Sunday, and they have a couple Bellows there that are pretty good. Also some Sargents and whatnot. And there's a great Edgar Payne that they finally promoted to like not the back of the place. So they have an Edgar Payne that kind of shows the front of the San Gabe's. It's pretty neat. Okay, so we got a dome. I should probably, while we're at it, there's another dome back here. I don't know properly the name of it. There's kind of two big old domes in Florence. And they got similar color to them. So I stayed at something called the Hotel Lorena. And Hotel Lorena is not far from the train station. I paint all over the world. I love painting all over the world. And I've painted at the Forbidden Palace. And so the first time we're going in there, and we asked the first group, hey, do you think it's okay if we paint in here? And they kind of look at us weird, and we're like, yeah, whatever. So this is at the first gate. The second gate, they take my stuff, and they're like, this is absolutely not allowed. Do not paint in here. I'm like, okay. So then we go to the third gate. This time I get the paint stuff out. I'm like, what do you guys think? And they're like, oh, that's fine. So I'm like, okay, 2 out of 3, we're good to go. And this is the first time I went there, and I set up to paint this amazing thing. The lady, this old lady comes running across. Hey, hey, hey! You know, walk here. You know, walk here. And like, oh man. So I moved a little bit. She comes running back. You know, walk here. You know, walk here. I'm like, okay, I won't walk here. And she's like, yeah, you know, walk here. After that, I'm like, okay, good. I messed up your English a little bit, and that's fair. So she, so I actually set up behind this sign, a bathroom sign, with my wife standing on the other side, so you couldn't see the legs. And I'm kind of like peering out around the side. And anyway, I get away with it. So then the next day I come, and again, this is the system of going through these gates, and like second gate is not happening, you know. But I was able to get the stuff in, and I set up to paint, and you're painting, you're having that moment, and you look up, and you see a guy in black. And then you look on this way, and there's another guy in black. And then there's one over here, and one behind you, and one over there. And they're all on their little, handset things. It's pretty, It was pretty disconcerting. This painting over here, Kyoto, that's a Kiyomidera. I bet that's butchered, but I was in Kyoto this year during the sakura season. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I was up there painting there right at the Krakatoa because I figured maybe this might not go well. And that one I got kicked out on. So they were, it's really hit and miss. You can't even paint in Venice in their San Marcos Square necessarily anymore. Well, last time I was there, I'm very proud of myself. I did Jedi Mind Trick, the police. Well, they're not really strictly real police. They're like neighborhood police, and they came to move me. And I don't know how it happened, but somehow I convinced them that I was doing what I needed to do by painting in the square, and they did what they needed to do by moving me 10 feet instead of fully out. And it worked, and I'm like, how did that just work? That's great. So, I'm getting there. We're getting there. I'm going to come down and work on sort of the city in this corner, and then we can get in and indicate sort of the bare bones. That's a good portion of what I actually make is when I'm gone. I was just at my parents' house looking at some things from 20 years ago, thinking, man, what a waste of time that was. Part of it is my eyesight's not as good as it was before, so I just see less. It doesn't matter. I think that there's more expression and try not to be so exact. So there are some mountains back here. They're really meant to be pretty dark. If I can get it so that we're preserving the freshness as we go, life will be better though. So also, painting it on dry, leaving a little bit of that gold coming through is not going to be, because of that gold frame that we know we're going to end up with, it's not going to be a problem. There's a painter, Hanson Putoff, old California painter, the guy lived till like 97, and as he got older, his paint just gets more and more like sludged on there, and they're really amazing paintings.
When you do studio paintings, is that your regular process? You paint from the little color study, or?
Yeah, this is a little bit bigger than I paint outside, but it's the same tool almost. So this has a pretty good. We'll get to it. I'm sort of just filling in. And I definitely have smaller brushes. The way that like Sargent and Soroya and all those guys, they actually held their brush way out there like that and did it like you're supposed to, like a Russian, and that doesn't mean I do that. But I can try. We can try for you. But yeah, so they'll come and use a way too big brush that has a good point on it. So let's see, not to bore you guys. A little bit more about me. I grew up in Pasadena. Yay for yay. I've been pretty fortunate when I look back at it. I had a chance to work at Caltech. I lived right next to a pretty darn good illustrator, and I would babysit his kids, and then they would be out at art events and what have you, and I'd babysit his kids quite frequently, and he had what has to be the world's best bonfire art library ever. You could not walk through his house without tripping over. I mean, there were little pathways through the books. Bill Stout is his name. And, a lot of, kind of some fame for doing dinosaur stuff, and did a lot of movie illustration, Conan the Barbarian. So Bill was always out working on the porch, and as a little kid with an art interest, he's a pretty invaluable resource. 2 doors down. And the other important thing about that is, at least to my parents, it made it look like our career was viable. Which meant I could go to school for it. Then after school, I taught for 7 years of teaching. I taught at Art Center some, and also at an academy in San Gabriel that kind of sent a bunch of kids through all the art schools. And that's the best learning you could ever have, is all these learning from 1,000 different uninfluenced opinions, you know, of all those kids. Kids make the best artists, by the way. I don't know why kid art isn't more collected or what have you. So something happens where you're ruined by like age 10, and draw as little as we can, what's already suggested, to try to give us a sense of scale. So I'm basically adding red grooves, but I'm trying very hard not to overdo it. Let the viewer paint it for you. So I've got these red grooves now, but there's actually no shadow. So now what we're missing is the shadow. So we come in, and we know that the shadow color is going to be influenced by the purple sky and darker. So now I've got a color that's roughly analogous to what's up on the dome. And you don't want to go too crazy with this, because it'll take over. But basically we can shadow the bottom of the roof, and even some parts where we do the whole thing. I just made a shadow where there's no roof. I don't know about that. But, okay, so then the light will also get its own shadow. So again, that's going to be roughly analogous to that. We don't need much. Just a few spots. That's too dark. Just a few spots to indicate that, hey, these are buildings, they have a verticality to them. And maybe that one's a bit. Again, trying to preserve the larger overall shape. And if the color feels like it's out of bounds, you can either take it out or you can add a bunch more and then it's in bounds. So that's what I'm gonna do right there. Just give it some frowns. Okay, now it's just about covered. could say is that there's no windows in this thing. You don't want, and windows are very dangerous in a cityscape. So I kind of miss something over here. Let's get that. Okay. So the windows are pretty dark. In Santa Barbara, they kind of work really good to make it like a dull, muted turquoise. In Florence, I'm not quite sure. But we can just put in a few to give just a suggestion of like, if you're ever in. Again, this color is intended to be a shadow color, so it'd be like something that is etched into the side. And if we went and did the more red one, we'd have to make the color more red to come after that. So you don't want to overdo it though, or it'll get spotty.
You don't try, right?
And not wasted too. He'll have to close his eyes.
Yeah, pick the light green.
Yeah. You are too? Yeah, mine. We get to copy his signature. That's a part of the city.
I guess I could have done. Have Linda do it. Linda picked out that.
Oh, we'll let Wyllis do it. Wyllis, you ready to pick?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
This one.
Light green, light green.
Voila. Well, except I'm holding some, so.
Oh dear.
It is, no. It ends with 8858.
Oh, Nicole.